It occurs to me, power stations, reservoirs in particular, hydroelectric power stations, should be as far down from the top of the water level as possible. But bearing in mind the life of the reservoir, if it's going to silt up in the next 100 years, then we want the generators to be above any anticipated sea level in that 100-year period. But do you see, to put simply the generator at the turbine at the bottom of the reservoir only gives you the height of the reservoir. How big the reservoir is irrelevant apart from the fact it's ongoing supply. It's the height of water that gives you the pressure, and the pressure that generates the power. So if you put the generator way down the valley towards, the mouth of the river, but not on the mouth of the river, we don't want the generator flooded in the next 50 or 100 years by melting ice or something, rising sea levels. The pressure further down the valley will be much greater because of the height now of the water, not just in the reservoir, but in the pipe from the bottom of the reservoir to you. The next thing is, this is way out, you really want to take the water from the top of the reservoir, not the bottom. If you take it from the bottom, you'll include I don't know, a lot of silt going through the turbine. If the turbine doesn't get corroded by such, well, that's not a problem. And it means that you get less silt building up in the reservoir. But if it is a problem, then you want to take the water from as high up in the reservoir as the level of the water is at present. In other words, you want the intake pipe that's going to lead down to the generator to be actually coming from just below floats on the surface of the reservoir. Now that may be just too complicated to make, but I'm not sure as it is. It can be suspended, a metre or two below very substantial floats that go up and down on guide rails according to the height of the water in the reservoir, so that you always get the benefit of the maximum height between the intake of water but avoid the silt concentration that presumably increases the lower you take the water out of the reservoir. So I'm just saying take the water from the upper part of the water level, not the lower part of the water level. But on the other hand, if there's no deterioration on the turbine or corrosion of the pipes, of course, down to the generators, to the turbines, then perhaps you want to take the water from the bottom of the reservoir because you'll be getting rid of some of the silt that would have otherwise just lain and built up in the lake, in the reservoir itself. Need to talk to an hydrologist as an engineer. Yeah. Thank you, Dad. Or you might think, oh, Marshall's flipped here. Why is he interested in hydroelectric power? It's got nothing to do with God. Oh, it has, of course. It's part of his fantastic world, and goodness, it's part of our fantastic standard of living too. And it's such a major project so often that if we get it wrong, we could just wreck the planet. You know, we've got thousands of dams now that are just silting up. And perhaps we've got thousands of hydroelectric schemes that could be far more efficient than, just increasing the efficiency of what we got could be better than building more and more at times. I don't know. But that aside, what about the analogy? When's the pressure on us greatest? When the contrast between good and evil is the greatest? And even to our insensitivity, we start to notice and become very clear on what we value and what we reject. It sounds almost irreverent to say God knows what he's doing, but the whole of creation is consistent with consistency. I was going to almost want to say laws of God. Not quite, because I'm such a believer in life being freedom of choice and eternal life being perfectly aware of what the best choice is. But the best choice is presumably a consistency with the incredible integrity and consistency of God. Because that's what we value. Because we assume it to be consistent with an immense loving kindness to all he's made. Because he would value all that he's made and given his capability, because he's made it so well. Well, I suppose it's a childish fascination, you might say, but I've been fascinated by anything huge, whether it was ships or buildings or dams or, I don't know. We're natural builders, aren't we? Of course. We're children of God. He makes. We make too. We're children. We make a mess of it, but he knows all about that. He comes to the rescue. Thank goodness. Thanks to his goodness. Love you, Dad. Thank you, Dad.